Hi, this is GameKave.
Hey, it's GameKave, a name that we reused from our previous outlet. That never got edited. I don't know, I might put in a screenshot. One of those guys is now a famous news reporter.
That's... Every time you say it, every time I talk to that guy, I'm just like, this is so weird.
Well, let's sit back. Let's sit back, get comfortable. This is so much more comfortable than the last time we did this.
Oh, yeah, because it's not just a bed.
This is GameKave, our duo conversational analysis show.
Yeah, we're here to talk about the video games.
And that industry is, well, at least if you look at the big names, big budget stuff, not exactly feeling too great.
It feels like every Sunday I do an hour to 2 hours of video game news on Twitch, and it is just the most depressing stuff. And even when games are good, it's like there's something depressing linked to it, and it's just like, dear God. I played this out back in May, and a coworker who listens to the podcast, it blew his mind because he had the realization, oh my God, it is all the same. And that is every game Ubisoft makes, or most of what Ubisoft makes, your Assassin's Creed, your Far Cry, your Watch Dogs, they're all the same video game. Open world, discover points with a big tower, collectible crap all over the map,
skill points,
skill trees, and these are
light attack, heavy attack,
counter sometimes, or block,
push button crafting.
Yeah, one button crafting where you just wander around to pick up crafting supplies. We had a term for this. It's called the Amorphous bland blob game.
Games trying to be everything at once in order to cater to every single possible person, something like that. Because
they're trying to make the most amount of money possible. And the funniest thing about that is I look at the Game Awards, I look at, what did well critically and amongst fans, and I would only describe one of those as an amorphous blob game. And even then, it was an exceptionally good, well-designed amorphous blob game.
We said bland.
Yes.
So what about them would characterize as bland? They're not bad. I think I want to point it out very clearly.
No, some of them can be really good.
The way I define the word bland is that it usually means there's nothing really particularly bad or offensively awful about it. But there's nothing good either. To me, it's the color gray. With Dragon Age Inquisition, that game won a lot of Game of the Year awards, and I personally found it to be very overrated.
I mean, you and I have had multiple discussions about that game where it's just
it's a checklist. That's how I see a lot of these amorphous blobs. Is they are checklist games. Does it have a big high-tech graphics engine? Check. Does it have procedurally generated quests or randomly generated quests? Yes. Does it have music written by some guy who's in a lot of TV and movies? Yes. Does it have a famous voice actor? Yes. Does it have one-button crafting? Yes. But the thing is, it's just a
open world,
big open world, and
as the biggest open world we could make.
Yes, and make it absolutely beautiful. Make sure that big opening vista set piece shows off how beautiful the open world is.
Yo, bro, do you remember that moment from when Bethesda games were good?
Yeah.
And you got out of the sewer.
Yeah.
Or you got out of the vault.
Yeah.
And you saw this big open vista, and it was the coolest shit ever.
Yeah.
Every game needs that now.
It's required.
Yes, it is.
It's on the rubric. You're gonna do it.
Yes.
And then one of the things to me that defines an amorphous blob game is that game is look at how much there is to do.
Yes.
They always use that's always a selling point, right? Because now the intention of that selling point is you want to make your game worth its money.
Yeah,
especially when you're a younger person. When you for me, I only got one new game every 2 or 3 months. Yeah, so of course I'm going to deeply value Oblivion. Because that's a game that has huge amounts of things to explore and playability. So a lot. But the thing is that compared to Dragon Age Inquisition, that was a case of there's so much to do.
But how much of it is worth doing?
Right. It felt like minimum wage jobs. this could be another one of those like, oh, AAA's in decline, right? But I feel like, well, okay, so how would we want to improve it? So like, it's kind of easy for us to name stuff like Made Side Quests that aren't boring, or make a narrative that's great, or do something that's like really unique and true to something like Baldur's Gate 3, and that kind of brought up the topic that we wanted to share today.
It's like, what is the soul of your video game? And I brought this up to you. Is Nintendo. Nintendo, when you look at them, their games all have the same soul and tone, even when they are entirely different. Like a Mario game, be it 2D, 3D, 2.5D, it still feels like a Mario game. Breath of the Wild feels nothing like A Link to the Past, but they both feel like Zelda games. You can describe the essence of any Nintendo game in 2 to 3 words. In Zelda, Zelda can be boiled down to a word, and it's exploration.
Right.
I
mean, would you say puzzle solving also?
Yeah, but it's exploring and puzzle solving and adventure. You can boil Metroid down to isolation, exploration, and combat. Like you can boil Mario down to whimsy and skill challenges. Resident Evil is pure action. Baldur's Gate is narrative and experimentation. I'm trying to remember the other nominees. Spider-Man, it's story and traversal. Alan Wake is actually kind of a hard one because that game has so much soul. But I would say that it is world building and narrative.
All right, it's going to be impossible to be original. But I think there's a very big difference in feel between doing it the checklist way and doing it because you want to achieve a mission. Obviously, it has to be a trade-off, right? Because some pure artistic visions are kind of very difficult for a majority of people to play. And I think you almost have to go into your game understanding what your potential market or audience size is going to be.
Right.
Because I think like so many publishers get carried away with, I need to sell this to everybody.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say, is like, we need to make a game for everyone. But the problem is that's not how art functions.
Yeah, because art is going to be a little jarring depending what it is.
Yeah.
And like, I think that that's where the mission gets lost. It's like, I want to make something like this because, well, of course, if you want to reach out as many people as possible, of course you're going to try and do everything, right? But you also can't take risks because doing something different, it's a gamble. And some gambles pay off.
Yes.
Many don't.
Well, and the thing is it's really hard to tell publishers not to make giant blob games because what was the best-selling game of last year was a blob game. It was Hogwarts Legacy. We talked about how they're trying to make good value by just pumping in worthless content. Mm-hmm. And look, we both have this memory of a kid that was us playing games and getting a game maybe once a quarter, maybe 2 games at Christmas, something like that. But overall, it was usually, so you want those games to last. Which, yes, a long game, like in my case Final Fantasy X, was always appreciated. But you can have a short game that's very deep, and that's also just as good. You want to talk about a game that is super short but wildly deep. The Xbox Ninja Gaiden and PS2 DMC3. Neither of those games are particularly long. They're maybe 10 hours-ish, 10 to 12, if my memory serves. But they are very, very, very deep and complex games, especially because Devil May Cry has a scoring system. So it's like, well, you didn't get triple S, so, go back and do the level again, be better at the combos, be better at the combat system.
Yeah.
To get that triple S and get all the unlockables. And I feel like that's, Hi-Fi Rush is a perfect example of that. Hi-Fi Rush has a grading system. It's S to F. And it grades you on how well you time your combos to the rhythm, how well, like, mastery.
It is a rhythm game mashed together with a platformer.
And Devil May Cry, like, and this is one thing I actually want to stress to developers. I don't necessarily need your game to be long, and I don't really need your game to have, like, tons of side quest crap if your game is really, really deep. The creator of Stardew Valley said, I want to make a modern take on the old Harvest Moon games. And he took Harvest Moon, and he improved upon Harvest Moon, and he expanded upon Harvest Moon, and he made one of the most successful video games ever made.
Yeah,
but
like it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be innovative. It doesn't even have to be like full blown esoteric either.
Yeah, well,
because because let's be honest, a vast majority of games are going to fall in between those two extremes.
Yes. Like we said, what is the soul of your game? Like in the case of Stardew Valley, it's like, I am making a Harvest Moon-like, but my take on it. And that's fine. Art is almost always iterative. Everyone loves Star Wars. Star Wars is based on old as shit samurai movies.
Dungeons and Dragons is obviously,
Lord of the Rings.
And you look at, like, Dragon Age.
Yeah.
Like, I played Baldur's Gate 3, and one of my impressions of Baldur's Gate 3, I said, like, this is everything that I loved about Dragon Age Origins. It reminds me so much of Dragon Age Origins in all of the best ways. But here's the thing, though. It's based on Dungeons and Dragons, which existed way before Dragon Age Origins did.
And Dragon Age Origins is based on Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, which is based on Dungeons and Dragons, which is based on Lord of the Rings.
But you know what? I wouldn't say Baldur's Gate or Dragon Age copied each other.
No, I don't think they did.
Because you could tell the story structures are very much the same, but they built their own characters, built their own world,
built their own feel. Because I played Dragon Age, and I played Baldur's Gate 3, and they don't feel the same.
And the thing is, if it's going to be an Amorphous Blob game, you might as well make it quality.
A $338 million Amorphous Blob game. Spider-Man 2. Let's go.
Let's maybe not do that. It also had the huge advantage of saying Spider-Man right on the front of it.
Yeah, I will say, I look to the future of... Because it feels like all AAA game development, or most of it, I looked at the top-selling best-selling games of the year, and half of them fit the Blob game mold. Hogwarts Legacy, Jedi Survivor,
It's the proven go-to formula.
Yes, but I also look at other stuff on that list, and Elden Ring's in the top 20. That is not an Amorphous Blob game at all. I look at Tears of the Kingdom. It's not one. I look at Street Fighter 6. It's definitely not one.
Yeah.
And I look at all those things, and it, one, gives me hope, but it also tells me that, okay, we might be seeing a trend away from this. And if not, smaller titles of lower risk, indie games, or just games that don't have the full attention of the company, Hi-Fi Rush, and Nintendo kind of, are games that are going to know what the point is and what the soul is.
Again, if your game feels like it's just basically a collection of Jira tickets that somebody just clocked in, cleared it out, and kicked it out the door, it's not terrible, but I think sometimes being a bland game can be worse than being a bad game. Because, sometimes the awfulness is the personality.
Yes, absolutely.
Deadly Premonition is a classic because
Deadly Premonition is a cult classic because of that. No More Heroes has an element of that because of that. Because No More Heroes, I think, is a good video game, but there are parts of it that are bad.
Yeah. At a time like this, when nobody knows what the obvious answer is, and gaming may or may not be in for a recession.
We'll see.
We will see. I would say use the soul of your game as the guiding point.
Yeah,
it may become Amorphous Blob. It may be a little too weird. It may be a little too different. There is a reason why really strong artistic visions don't sell very well.
Yeah.
But maybe that can be changed a little bit. However, you need to keep the soul of your game in clear view.
Yes.
Because it's I look at it like core values.
Yes.
A person has core values.
Yes.
Now, granted, there's so many different... It's like this vague guidance or vague gut feeling that I'm sure every human, like every person, including myself, has.
I think a perfect example of this, to sum up, is way back, I watched the making of Halo 1. And Jamie Griesemer, one of the main designers of that game, said, "It's any video game is about finding your 30 seconds of fun and repeating it over and over in different ways. What is your 30 seconds of fun? Is that 30 seconds of cool narrative happening? Is that 30 seconds of great combat? Is that 30 seconds of wild artistic choices? Whatever that is, find it." And, for Halo, that was their combat loop and their shooting, and great. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Cool. So that's the
Bye.
pilot episode of GameKave with a K.
Like everything we touched. K's all around.
I just picked this name because I just had it sit in my head. Cause
It's a good name.
It's from our previous outlet, and also this place is not exactly
This is very much.
This is Bronson's cave.
This is very much a Bronson cave. Very similar to
still the tiny little room from many years ago.
Yep. I make it work though.
All right. Well, hopefully you guys enjoy our pilot episode of the Game Cave. We'll see how it goes. See y'all later.
Bye guys, we love you. Go follow us on Twitter and Twitch and Instagram and YouTube.
And TikTok.
And TikTok, I forgot about that one.
Are we on X?
Yeah, that's Twitter. That's Twitter. I refuse to call it X, it's Twitter.
Oh, boy.
Come for me, Elon stands.